it's almost 30 and still growing. I think we can start. I will introduce our next speaker, Christof Petig. Christof is a lead software design engineer at Active, a global technology company that designs and delivers safe, smart, and sustainable mobile solutions. He has over 25 years of professional experience in C++ development. Can you imagine it? It's half a life. And now he is passionate about advocating Rust. I understand why so much pain in the previous 25 years. I'm just joking. Christof is also code developer of Veloren, core developer of Veloren, open source multiplayer voxel RPG game, written entirely in Rust. We mentioned about it a couple of times in our channel. Also, Christof will share with us his passion for Veloren, as well as his insights and experience on game development in Rust. Please welcome Christof Petig. Christof?
Yes, hello. So thanks for introducing me. So if you just go to the next slide. Sorry, I just have some tricky things with the presentation due to not having a second screen. So my name is Christof. I'm one of the 13 core developers of the game Veloren, and I would like to show you why programming games in Rust is a lot of fun. So if you go just to the next page. In Veloren, you first choose a character and then explore the world through its eyes. Over time, you gain more options as you acquire equipment and skills. And the game is open source and written in 100% Rust. So if you just go to the next one. Veloren is a team effort. And not only a lot of programmers, but also writers, artists, translators, and many other people contributed to it. The number of members on the Discord server can give you a broad idea about its popularity. And while a lot of the world is procedurally generated, some elements are hand-designed using a voxel editor. And typically, once you want some fixed size, or actually, once you want some side variation or some shape variation, between similar elements, you just program them, and instead of just designing them in a static manner. We use a lot of Rusty object notation files because they control all the probabilities, relative positions, and names of all these things. And these files can be easily edited by anyone and don't need any recompile. Often these files are also hot reloaded, and that means that you can directly see the effect after you make a change. Yeah, and it's a rather large project, as you can see here. So if you could please go to the next slide. So Veloren started as an open source re-implementation of a popular game from 2013. The alpha version of Cube World was very popular, but it lacked awaited updates for roughly 5 years. So in 2018, there was a critical mass of people who wanted to create a similar experience and one they could tinker with and extend. So in May 2018, Zesterer announced on Reddit that he would like to recreate this game in Rust, and he was looking for allies. This background is one of the oldest screenshots I could find for this game. The game gradually became more popular, and last year a YouTube review created a large inrush of new players into the game. The server was at its limit and giving a hardly responsive experience to every player around. So we had to optimize quickly and added a server browser to just level the load to more servers. Also, because a lot of the because of the large number of new players which are non-English speaking, we had several challenges facing actually to get moderation properly installed. So it became quite difficult to do proper moderation. Please go to the next slide. Veloren would not be possible without Rust. We integrate Rust format and Clippy into our build pipeline and deploy unit tests, but the largest difference is made by the fuzzy compiler. Making changes to a real-time network-operated game with more than 100 simultaneous players would require superhuman care and very skilled contributors in C++. And Rust enables us to graciously accept Rust learners' contributions with only a cursory review for style and performance mistakes. And we actively encourage people to learn the language while tinkering with this game. And we also encourage them to ask questions on Discord, of course. Please go to the next slide. As Veloren was created by people very familiar with the Rust organization, we share many things, including the code of conduct. And this creates an ongoing cultural clash between diversity on the Rust side and gaming culture, which is often quite different. As we use Discord for chat and GitLab because of its free large object storage, the merge request process is, of course, different than from the normal Rust compiler. So in this case, we use different tools, but we share a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the goals behind this project. So please go to the next slide. The infrastructure to run an open source project involves many more topics than I was imagining before I joined the project. I would especially like to emphasize the developer block, which keeps people connected to the project and informed about changes, and the Discord server, which is our main means of communication. And we have a bidirectional matrix bridge between Discord and Matrix, just for all the people which do not like the Discord terms of service. Of course, the unthankful task of community moderation is very important and something which we will not easily see unless you really look very closely to the project. And of course, we need donations to keep the server bill paid. And please go to the next slide. Rust game development typically involves a data structure, which is called ECS, Entity Component System. Entities are things in the world. Components are their position, velocity, and more similar things. And systems handle movements and collisions and damage rolls. So basically all the physics engine is a system. And we will just see more on the next slide. But just as an introduction, Rust, sorry, not yet, but Rust permits only a single object, the owner, to modify data, while no other object is watching. And this is, of course, very difficult for traditional game structures. So the ECS has taken over as a widely agreed solution and is a part of every major game engine in Rust, which is, for example, Bevy. Please go to the next slide with share some code from the game. So here you can see a very simple system code. You see a subscription for 5 components in the top corner, which are subscribed for reading. And there's one subscription for writing, which is to the controller. And you can just see that from the first line within the function or within the implementation. This controller just passes events from the client to the server for further processing. And it adds the player entity ID, which is, of course, an entity, to the list. And so basically is the connection between the between the user interfacing and the server by just pre-selecting a specific entity. So if you just go to the next slide. Veloren consists of a server and a client binary. You can run the server on any computer. And once you are in single player mode, it also gives you special superpowers, which would be too disruptive on a shared server. Like, for example, breaking walls, building new structures, summoning creatures, handing out items to anyone, including yourself, teleporting anywhere, and flying with magic brooms. And the server simulates the world and synchronizes the action across its clients, while the client draws all those graphics and all the animations and handles all user input. And if you just go to the next slide. So we created a Grafana board to easily spot problems with the server process. And if you just scan this QR code, you can take a look at the live data of the game server as it is now. Notable data of here is player count, network bandwidth, and system execution time, of course. So you can see all the systems as they get executed. And of course, the Gantt chart is also very interesting because it shows which systems parallelize quite well and which ones have dependencies. So you can also get a clear understanding what still needs to be optimized. If you just go to the next slide. We use a lot of well-known crates for Veloren. Unfortunately, newer versions of WGPU no longer support DirectX 11, and half of our player base uses older computers which only support DirectX 11. Yeah, and similarly, we also still look for a good UI solution and are stuck between Conrad, ICE, and eGUI. And in the background, you can just an eGUI user interface, which is used for debugging and administrator tasks. But of course, Conrad and ICE, Conrad is hardly maintained any longer, and ICE did not really fit it well, but we are in the process of migration here. So we also developed the habit of relying on unstable features, even though the most important ones, type alias infiltrate and generalized associated types are now either close to being stable or really stable. And two crates have been separated out from Veloren. Also, I clearly see that we should strive to create more reusable components, which would be shared with the community. If you just go to the next slide. We use Tracy for live profiling of both the client and the server. And here you can see a reading club done by the Veloren project, which explains the usage of Tracy. And you can just directly go there from the QR code. So we created up to 9. For now, we created just 9 reading clubs, which introduce you to the code of the game and also introduce you to common infrastructure things like Tracy, which is really helpful. Yeah, if you please go to the next slide. There are so many things that I always have a hard time down selecting screenshots, as you probably can tell from this presentation. And there's plenty of things to this visit within the game. And yeah, of course, you can spend a lot of time there. And it's very a nice experience to just also contribute to it. So it really is a lot of fun. So please go to the next one. Some effects made the most change for a player experience. Please go to the next one, Stefan. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Especially for about the Northern Lights. I could not stop taking screenshots once I first saw the Northern Lights in the sky at night. And these things are really make a huge difference in player experience because also the terrain is a combination of random field initialization. And then we run some realistic erosion algorithms. And so creating a new world from a random seed number takes around 1 hour simulation time on a fast computer. The terrain beyond the neighborhood is called level of detail. And just adding some things to the level of detail, for example, being able to just see houses and trees in the more far distance, really added a lot of flavor to the game and depth to it, and made a huge experience difference. So the level of detail rendering is still incomplete because there's still some things which are not yet fully rendered in that one. Please go to the next one. So around once a quarter, we run a community event. It all started on the left top with handing out some fireworks during that release party, and culminated last fall in a treasure hunt, a pirate-themed treasure hunt. And yeah, there's some nice screenshots which are actually So this screenshot is from the 0.6 release party, where we handed out the fireworks, and you can still see a dragon, and it feels a bit dated here. So please go to the next slide. There's always more to add, to fix, and so on. We will add more weapon animations, more towns and more dungeons, more animals. Simulation is always increasing, and a lot of players are waiting for quests. Of course, with a procedurally generated world, which is basically being explored by many, many players, it's quite difficult to get quests which suit every need. The module system is still in its infancy. We would like to just get it really working with WebAssembly. It's ongoing work. And of course, we would like to specialize either non-player characters or characters to specific professions. And this is just ongoing at this moment. For now, player characters are limited to one server. So a server federation would really improve player experience, because you could just start on a different server by just taking your player character to there. And of course, a port to either a web browser or to mobile devices and consoles are really long-term goals. But we did not really start there. And the background picture is just a preview of the handcrafted content for the next release party, which I really look forward to. Please go to the next slide. If you would like to start game development in Rust, you can visit the resources on the Veloren project. And so far we created 9 videos, which I already mentioned, roughly 1 hour each. And of course, there's a much wider community for Rust game development. I really recommend at least looking into a monthly Rust game development working group newsletter. And of course, the Bevy game engine is the most favorite and popular one. And we would use a lot of Bevy if Bevy had been around when we started Veloren. It's simply that case. And of course, Macrocrat would be another good choice if you really want to develop games in Rust. Bevy also comes with nice tutorials and periodically runs contents. There's one Bevy game jam currently in progress, and it has a vibrant and welcoming community. Please go to the next slide. So none of these slides would have been possible without numerous contributors and the kind people who patiently improved my first lines of Rust on the project. Thanks a lot. And the QR code will take you to this long downhill glider flight, which is more than 1 minute, and you will just see the game in action. Of course, feel free to take a look at how we solve the infrastructure and all these things. All of this should be accessible to everyone. And I especially invite you to join our Discord or Matrix chat and to ask questions. And if you are stuck, feel free to DM me. I'm Christof within the server. Because we have lots of new players quite recently, and simply our infrastructure is at its limit for answering all these things. So I would just like to ask this interesting poll. So what would be your favorite massive multiplayer online role-playing activity? And to me, it's all fun. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Christof. While people choosing their best activity, I suggest go through questions. We have quite a lot, more than 10. What do you think?
Yeah, please do.
And we will stop the poll a bit later to see results. The first question from Vitaly Sapronenko. You probably a bit touched it. Does Veloren use some graphics engine, and why?
Sorry, can you? Sorry, I didn't get all of that. So it's about graphics. So why we did? Why we chose voxel graphics?
Oh, Engine. Do you use any engine? And if you use why, and if you don't use why?
Okay.
I guess you answered the question, but maybe you can repeat.
Yes. So we are not using a graphics engine of that type, but we are of course using WGPU, so a graphics abstraction. So we are not directly, so we use a way of just interfacing to the menu. So it's OpenGL, it's WebGL, WebGPU, it's DirectX, it's Metal. So all of these things are nicely abstracted away by WGPU, but we don't use any higher level graphics engine. Because at that point in time when Veloren was started, there was no graphics engine around, so we just created our own. And because voxels have very, very specific requirements on graphics, of course, it just stuck.
Thank you. The next question from TS. Do you have plugins in mind? If yes, do you use some scripting language, native libs, or maybe WebAssembly?
Yes, we do. So we have plugins in mind, of course. I'm currently working on getting them really into the game. One type of plugin would be just to add content, and that is quite close to being realized. And for plugins, we chose WebAssembly. And of course, any language which compiles to WebAssembly would fit. So probably JavaScript would not be the worst solution, but of course, Rust would also be the first primary target for us.
Thank you, Christof. Question from Bogdan Balaklushin. What was the most difficult problem you personally encountered in developing the game?
Proper economy simulation. I started the simulation of the economy, and it's very easy to just create a simulation, and then you just watch the simulation, and all of a sudden your population just spirals down to nothingness, because some interesting basically a feedback loop in there. So that was personally my hardest part, and also for me, understanding all the parts which involve understanding Haskell. So I just come from a non-functional programming experience background. And there is some macros, which is, for example, make case elimination, which is really indicating a lot, or makes a lot of sense to Haskell programmers, but doesn't to me. So to me, this is just, I always need to ask someone else of what this actually means. This is about non-exhaustive pattern matching, which to me is just a word. Sorry.
Is there strong influence of Haskell on the project?
Yes, for sure. Because some of the core developers really like Haskell, and yes, I can say so that yeah. And I also see a strong influence of Haskell to Rust, so it would just perfectly match up.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Nikita. Nowadays, mobile games are much more popular than computer games. I guess you meant PC games. Do you plan to port Veloren to mobile devices? Probably not.
Yes. But it's well, because we chose WGPU, it means that we already have an abstraction which would be capable of running it both on the web, basically in a browser. And it was also enable us to just run it on a mobile device. We do have some demonstration on a Steam Deck, for example. We also, I've also seen it ported to some other, game consoles, but of course, yeah, it's not out of scope. It's just we are currently lacking the amount of people to just already started. So yeah, and of course, for mobile, you also have to rethink your user interface strategy, because it would just be totally different. It would require basically using sensors which show the position and all these things. So
Thank you
instead
for
of
that.
just relying on keyboard. You don't have a keyboard on a mobile phone, for sure.
Makes sense. Actually, I doubt there is any project like game project which is successful, which aims both platforms, PC and mobile.
I've seen a Macrocrat demonstration which works both on mobile phones and also on this PC. So it has been done. I think that was there's some fighting game in a mud, so I don't recall exactly the name, but I've seen that also been ported to Android. So it has been done, and we will also like to do it.
Okay, Danilo Wittkowski, what is network architecture? Client server, peer-to-peer, or something else?
It's clearly client server. Also, we do some interpolation of physics, for example, on the client. So we just try to give a smooth experience, even if the server is not responding that closely. But nevertheless, all the basically the mandatory physics is calculated on the server, and also the interaction between different players and non-players are all computed by the server. So basically just animation and some physics is on the client. So I really would call it client server. And it's not peer-to-peer because for porting to the web, peer-to-peer would make more sense. So WebRTC or some WebSockets, something similar. Yeah, we would need to change before moving to a web-based platform. But for now, it's client server.
As far as I know, you have bottleneck with number of players on the server. Are you planning to solve the problem, to scale it up in the future?
Yes, we are. There's an ongoing effort which I'm now quite happy to see more progress on right now because it's spring break in the US. So the person which started this also continued there, which is optimizing the world creation a lot. And this should help already. But right now we are roughly at a limit of 400 players on the server. But of course, if we just get the bandwidth further down by just caching them more and just distributing computation better, we should be able to scale to maybe double the amount, and that should already do quite well. But of course, peer-to-peer is always nice, and it's much more easy to set up and just play with friends besides just setting up a server and then correctly configuring your network, so your router.
As I understand, it's a single server architecture. Is it possible to make kind of sharding, several servers, splitting?
That would be the server federation, which I talked about, and it would just require several a character migration between servers, and that of course would also level the amount of player on a single server. But this is not that easy because you would just need to properly really build a web of trust between the servers so that you cannot easily just use a compromised server to level up and then get back to normal servers. Yeah, it's a complex problem.
Looks like blockchain problem. Like you operate in non-trusted environment.
Yeah, still the server owner, of course, is to be trusted because the server owner can hand administrator rights to anyone. And administrator rights include just giving items to everyone or summoning any monsters anywhere in the world. So basically, yeah, it's yeah, it's a very interesting challenge.
Yeah, very tough. And a great opportunity to get experience of solving such problem. on open source project. I understand why Veloren is so popular and attracts so many developers.
I can just tell that personally, everything I'm just needing at work right now, so all the skills I need at work, I just learned on this project. So yeah, it's for sure has been a tremendous benefit to me, and yeah, it's an amazing learning experience, and there's many highly skilled Rust programmers on this project.
Yeah, and I mentioned that I'm have a very good impression of how everything is organized. That's also masterpiece of management. So yeah, it's a good project to get experience, in my opinion. The next question from Yuri Kovpak: what database storage stack do you use for collecting events?
We use SQLite, and as right now it's just a very simple solution, and of course this would makes it also more easy for you to set up your own server. You just run the binary, and this is all you need, and there's no database management involved. And the database has never been a bottleneck, performance bottleneck to us, because it's just we just store the current state of the character every 10 seconds, and yeah, it's just a fine solution. Of course, if you really want to do a federation of servers, then probably you would like to get some centralized database.
Thanks for answer. Question from Vitaly Sapronenko: what future do you imagine for Veloren? Are you going to introduce physics? Do you want this project was used by schools?
Sorry, by school. I didn't get that word.
Like Minecraft is heavily used by schools for pupils. Do you see similar future for Veloren? Is it going to compete with Minecraft?
Well, actually, just from judging from the manpower, we can hardly compete with Minecraft yet. But on the other hand, we really want to so this should always remain a free-to-play experience. So we just want to keep it that way. And also just free to run your own server and just have fun with just peers and not pay to win. So this and also just bringing open source games just to the next level, basically.
I see. And what about
sorry.
And what about physics?
You might have seen that Dwarf Fortress is one of the games which we took inspiration from. And of course, Dwarven Fortress is known for its excellent physics engine and all these things. So we would like to just simulate everything to the last instance. And yeah, Dwarven Fortress is just known for cats licking beer from the ground in taverns and just dying from intoxication. And we're not there yet, but we definitely want to go. For me, it's known for as a project which is very successful, but not in terms of commercial. Dozens of projects become so commercially successful using small fraction of ideas of Dwarf Fortress, and it's question: will Dwarf Fortress get financially successful in the future? For me, we're not. Yeah, so we're basically not aiming for getting into any sort of business model. So we really want to remain as an open source project, which is community driven.
Yeah.
And of course, there might be servers which offer specialized items and all these things. And as we know how much effort it is to just run a server and do all the moderation, we're not preventing it, but we are also not encouraging it.
Okay. The next question from Mikita Ikno. There are a lot of eye candy features in your game. Can eye candy feature such as reflection in water or northern lights cause performance problem on moderate computer?
Yes, of course. All these eye candy really directly clash with having performance on old computers. We are doing the reflection not by ray tracing, but just by on-screen mirroring, which of course has some strange artifacts which you can see in. If you know what to look for, you can actually see the imperfection. But it's good enough, and we do have, of course, different graphics level. And personally, I just play it on a old computer, which is a non-gaming laptop, which is 5 to 6 years old, and it still works fine.
Oh.
So should actually work with any graphics hardware around. So and especially with any gaming computer around.
I see. A question from Yuri Kovpak. What kind of knowledge is needed to dive into Veloren game development? Like zero?
Yes. You can just start by creating nice assets, nice voxel models, for example. There's plenty of good tutorials for that one. You can just do all the translations. We just use Fluent for translations. And of course, if you really want to dive into Rust development, you could just start with a very small one, a small part. We also have a text-based user interface, which is just a proof of concept, which is called Veloren. And I use that one to just get a grasp for the structure of the system, because it's just 300 lines of code. So you can easily take a look at it and just explore from there. So I really would say that there's no preconditions required. And a lot of people just join us because they really would like to get contribute something, and editing a RON file does not require that much of skill. So, and
should I read Rust book first to become a Rust developer on the project?
No.
No? Okay.
I think you should just start reading it, and whenever it gets boring, just switch to something else. Because I really know that reading the Rust book, you can just understand a lot, but having a specific real-world example along with the book helps the most. And then if you just run into something which you really don't understand, just go back to the book and try to figure out what exactly is happening there, and vice versa. So
how long does it take for you to read the Rust book?
I did not complete it yet.
Okay. Quite long. The next question, Vitaly Straponenko. Don't you plan split code base in separate crate to make it be game construct for other voxel games? Are you planning to make from the game a set of tools from which anyone can make his own game? Is it?
It's already a selection of plenty of crates. So we already have, I never checked it, but should be more than 10 crates already. So it's already quite modular. And of course, we would, I take this one as really something to do in the upcoming months, just to look which parts of Veloren could be really benefit other projects as well, and we should strive to create a separate repository from there. Of course, right now, having everything in a single repository is quite nice because it makes easy to change things and move things around. But for sure, factoring out other crates is something we should strive for.
What a motivation for the project to become such set of pieces, because once the project become it in danger, because another project which is based on this could become much more popular, and it's like creating competitors. I don't know.
Well, I would be fine with creating competitors because basically it's just about spreading the usage of Rust in game development, really encouraging open source game development, and yeah, it's always good. Competition is always good for you, basically, because it increases the quality. So yeah, I think it. Yeah, and also I know how much effort went into Veloren. So just creating or maintaining your own fork is probably not a lot of fun unless you have plenty of people around.
Makes sense. Is it possible to play with code base and in week or two make completely different game from pieces of Veloren?
It should be possible. Of course, a lot of Veloren is just based on the fact that it's a procedurally generated world. And if you just create a static world, that would be more close to other games which just use static content. So just looking at Battle for Westnorth or I forgot about the other ones. So most of these other ones have a fixed world. And this is, of course, more easy to create these things. And I would just say, if you just create your own static world with the, its own crests to follow and all these things, then it would be a different game already. And of course, changing the graphics is always changes the game, but there's a lot of graphics to change.
I see.
And animations is also quite hard to learn. So doing animation requires a lot of skill.
Makes sense. Thanks for answering. I don't know how much time do you have. You have more questions. If you have, if you are short on time,
no.
Okay. Then we just continue. TS, is there single player or local server mode? If not, any plans for that?
There is a single player mode, and if you just started in single player mode, you already have administrator rights, so you can use all the nice goodies which require administrator rights. So including teleport, giving any sort of skills or item, or so any sort of equipment to you. You basically it's just you just beat the game within 10 seconds by just giving you superpowers. But of course, single player mode and also just starting your own server just involves executing the server binary. And then you just need to give other people access to it. So within a LAN party, for example, it would just be easy.
Thanks for the answer. The next question from Yuri Kovpak. How do you imagine the future of Rust game dev? Can you give any prediction, forecast?
Whoa.
Do you see any trend?
Basically, I see that to me, Rust should replace C++ in game development because it's more efficient, it's more easy to use. It's much more difficult to abuse. So if you really do large scale C++ development, Rust is just the natural choice to just make things work more smoothly. When it comes to competing with Unity and C#, yeah, future will basically tell. So I think there's when it comes to Unity and these other larger
engines.
game engines. It just there's a lot of interesting competition, but I'm looking forward to just seeing a full-fledged Rust game engine, and yeah, Bevy should probably come close quite quickly. And so there's several interesting efforts, and given the current progress, we should be able to just get yeah, to an even ground with C++ and C# within a few years. And personally, I would never. Personally, I don't want to go back to C++ or any of these things, just due to the not very good user experience by in programming these things. I just it feels so clumsy. You miss all the tools, and basically it's so easy to just create something which doesn't work. No.
I see. I want to remind
Rust is the right tool for game development.
That Christof has 25 years of experience writing C++ programs, so know that he has he can be blunt about it.
Yeah.
Do you plan to make VR XR version or something?
Yes. Sadly, none of the developers has a VR set yet. And I'm very close to just hijacking a friend's VR set just to try to figure out what exactly we need. But of course, VR would be the most amazing next level of Veloren. We just happen to not have a developer around which already has a VR kit and would like to just port it to there.
Vitaly Sapranenko, if you have VR kit, it's a good opportunity for you. It was a question of Vitaly Sapranenko. The next question, Bogdan Mark, do network code, do you use UDP in networking?
GPG, sorry.
UDP
UDP, yeah, sorry. Well, it's more complicated. So right now we are using TCP, but it's not a good solution. So we actually looked into Quick, and we think that Quick might be the right solution, but we do not really have all the things in place. So Quick is basically user space TCP implementation on top of UDP, so with different priorities and all these things. So it's a very good question, and the answer is we are working on it.
Okay,
so we're not yet using UDP, and also yeah, but TCP is not the best tool for sure. And especially with people which have low bandwidth connections or high latency connections, it's yeah, not the best experience there.
Thank you. And another question from a person who probably make his hands dirty on game development. Matvey Chertva, he's asking, what the event handling strategy do you use in case of bad connectivity with server? Maybe event skip or event wait or some other strategy, if you know something about it.
Yeah, I can try to guess, or from the little part of knowledge I have about it. So I know that the client will happily just continue whatever it is simulating with physics, even if the connection to the game server is lost for some time. So the character will still just continue walking in the same direction and all these things. And then basically it just needs to reconnect. So yeah, message or synchronizing up between a lot of messages waiting for a specific client, of course, is not easy, and we hope to get better performance by when we switch to Quick. So yeah, because then there's multiple priorities, and you can more easily recover from just basically a congestion of packets.
Thanks, Christof. Another question from Yuri Kovpak. Is there any secret in the way how you handle parallel computing of different games events?
Whoa. I think the secret is ECS. Yes, properly designing many systems in a way that they can run in parallel makes a huge difference. And of course, always, you need to just strive for computing a lot in parallel and then merging all the results later. So yeah, there's a lot of secret sauces involved.
Do you use ECS on both server and client?
Yes, yes. And we also plan to, do we already use ECS for, we plan to create another ECS for simulation. So basically, there will be a lot of ECS involved, and ECS basically is the magic sauce. And then, of course, you would need to get all the different systems independent of each other in a way that they can run in parallel. And right now, the physics system is just our largest single system, which cannot run in parallel to any other. So yeah, I would say just properly designing systems for parallel execution and not interdependency is a solution here. And also we do have basically these delayed message boxes. So some computations will only affect the next run of the whole system. And this, of course, also makes a huge difference when it comes to parallelism.
Makes sense. Matvey Chirma, is there already or is it planned to implement the possibility of changing the surrounding environment of the game, like building, digging mines? As I understand, the game have all the features.
We do have build mode where you can actually erase voxels and create additional voxels, but we don't use it on our server just due to moderation. Because we had already had the fact that you could just destroy some terrain by using a fire, staff, or bomb. And it was used a lot to just create strange signs and signatures in the ground. So this is just being able to build anything is just a moderation nightmare. But but as a server owner, you can just directly activate it. And then, of course, all the players on your server would be able to build.
Okay, thanks. And one more question from Matvey Charva. Do you see any chance of making your own engine from the Veloren? And as I understand, marketing it as separate product. If I understood the question correctly.
Yes, I think if you're really looking for writing a voxel game engine, which is network connected, so massive multiplayer in Rust, then you could just separate parts of it and create your own engine from that. So far, we have not seen anyone just asking for that. So maybe there is a demand for just creating more games from the same engine. But of course, now I realized Empyrean would be one of the other nice games which use an engine. And you could just take these, the quests from Empyrean and just create it within Veloren. So by just putting the things into the server. And then you would just be able to play it all in with multiplayer and in 3D, full 3D. So
thanks. It was the last question. Now we can get back to our poll. Christof, do you want to comment results? We have
Yeah, it's very interesting. So my personal favorite is, of course, exploring the world. And I see that a lot of people also like to team up and fight monsters. So this is one of the really things bringing a lot of people to Veloren. And player versus player contests, we don't have it yet, but of course, we get a lot of questions about creating guilds and creating scoreboards and all these things which are well known from other games. And I think we have a decent amount of our player base which likes to do these things, so we will probably get it at one point in the future. Of course, crafting a quest. I'm quite surprised by the low number of votes for skills for quests. But let's see. We are currently working on these things, and yeah. So it's not totally surprising. And I always, of course, I just pre-selected a lot of things which are already possible and which would be part of the game. And
Okay.
exploring the world, of course, we have one sub channel which just where you just post nice game screenshots, and it's used a lot for just posting all these epic adventures and nice things. And there's a lot of things to see, nice things to see, and of course all the weather simulation and water graphics and all these things really add up to a lot of nice scenery screenshots.
Probably, yeah.
So exploring is for sure, yeah, a favorite activity.
Probably your average player is not average Rust developer, and
no.
Paul would be would give different result for players which play usually heavily the game. Okay, thank you, Christof. If anyone has question, we have quite a lot of people still here, despite it's late and everybody wants to get to after party, which taking place in Kyiv and Lviv. So if no one has no question, if anyone wants to ask Christof question directly, it is your last chance. Just raise your hand.
Also, just join our Discord or Matrix chat and just ask me directly. So it's not it's not your last chance. It's just the last chance for tonight.
Yeah, you're right. You can join Discord server of Veloren, and as you mentioned, it is a very good opportunity to get experience from very good, very strong professionals. And Christof, I want to thank you for finding time for making the presentation, for answering all the questions, for jumping in the conference. We actually have several people from Western Europe who jump out from the conference because of our format. Great respect that you with us, that you do your best to help, to support. I know usually German people don't take part in conference on weekend. Double grateful for you taking part despite this. Thank you, Christof.
Thanks a lot. I really feel honored to have been able to speak here and enjoy really speaking about the game. And I like just getting more people interested in it.
And I will take a few minutes to close the conference. I want to remind you about after party and I want to tell a few words about people who help us. First of all, it's our speakers and evangelist of Ukraine. They took all the managerial pressure on this back, and what you see today, it is collective result of work of 30 people. And also I want to say that we collected more than actually $8,000. You donated more than $8,000 to help Ukrainians, visitors. I mean, it's not small money, it's significant. And I want to also mention about our partners. It's FIVI Days. They organize our informational sponsor who make conferences, workshop, courses. They helped us adverting the conference, also platform which all we know and love, though also AIH Labs, a cybersecurity company powered by Ukrainian startup Scholar that for more than 7 years serves the market leader around the globe. Also Techens Lab, which is focused on building innovative DeFi products on scalable layer 1 protocols, and of course our main partners, Intellias guys are very friendly. They help us a lot. They invited, by the way, Christof. Thank you guys for this, and supported us in every possible way they can. And I want also mention about New Protocol. New Protocol is our prime partner. They also do, I would say, more than they could. Thank you, all you. After party already started. If you are not on after party and want to get there, here you can see addresses. In Kyiv it's Голосіївський проспект 132, and in Lviv вулиця Джерельна 20. Grab your beer, and if you are not part of our community, please join, and have a nice day. Thank you all.